So let's begin with our story. The boy who never grew up. This is the story of Peter Pan, a boy who never grew up but ran away to live in the Neverland when he was small. The Neverland is an island that children visit in their dreams and where anything can happen. To reach it, you have to be able to fly. Peter could fly. Sometimes when he felt lonely, he went back to the human world and listened at nursery windows to the bedtime stories mothers told their children. Their children called Wendy, Michael and John Darling lived with their parents near Kissington's garden. This was the Peter's favorite place. You could see a statue of him there. The children had an unusual nurse called Nana. She was a big Newfoundland dog who kept in the kitchen of the nursery. If she had been on guard the night Peter came in the story would never have happened. Mrs. Darling was a very happy woman who hugged and kissed her children often. Mr. Darling was more serious. He worried a lot and did not think it was a good idea to have a dog for a nursemaid. Mrs. Darling used to tell the children bedtime stories every night. Then she tucked them in and lit her lights. As she tidied up nicely, she would wonder that they were dreaming about. If Mrs. Darla could have seen into their minds, she would have seen a picture map of the island of Neverland. It looked a lagoon, a pirate ship, flamingos and a coral reef. There was a forest with wild beasts, scavengers and fairies. Mrs. Darling was puzzled because the children talked so much about a boy called Peter Pan. They said he lived with the fairies. Mrs. Darling thought it must be some silly tale Nana had told them. It all comes from having a dog as a nurse, he grumbled. One day, Mrs. Darling found some leaves just under the nursery window. Peter must have dropped them, said Wendy. He's so untidy. But it's 3 floors up. How he get there? Said Mrs. Darling. You must have been dreaming. But Wendy has not been dreaming. The very next day, Mrs. Darling was sewing by the nursery fire and had almost fallen asleep. The window blew open and the boy dropped it on the floor. He was dressed all in leaves. A strange little light followed him, darting round the room like a living thing. It woke Mrs. Darling, who knew at once that the boy was Peter Pan. She cried out in alarm and Nana sprang at the boy, who leaped back through the window. Nana closed it, just catching his shadow by the feet. Nana picked up the shadow and took it to her mistress, who rolled it up and put it in a drawer. The following Friday, Mr. and Mrs. Darling were invited to a party at the house a few doors away. Mr. Darling was very cross with Nana and decided she had been changed up in the yard. Mrs. Darling was worried because Nana kept barking. That's not her usual bark, she said. She only barks like that when there's danger." "Nonsense!" cried Mr. Darling. "Hurry up or we'll be late for the party." As the front door closed, a bright light appeared in the nursery, darting into drawers and cupboards. When the light stayed still for a moment, you could see it was a light in all, but a fairy called Tinker Bell. The next moment, Peter himself came through the window. "Come on, Tink, wherever you are," he said, "and show me where my shadow is." Tinker Bell told him that it was in a drawer. She spoke in a golden tinkle, like a chime of tiny bells. Peter pulled out his shadow and shut the drawer, forgetting that Tinker Bell was still inside. He tried to stick his shadow back on with water, then with soap, but nothing worked. He was in despair when Wendy woke up. "What's the matter?" she asked. "My shadow won't stick on," Peter complained. "Give it to me," said Wendy. "I'll sew it on." Peter was thrilled to have his shadow back, and Wendy was so pleased that she offered him a kiss. Peter had never heard of a kiss, but he thought it must be a present, so he held it on his hand. Wendy gave him a timbling instead, and forever after that he called the kiss a thimble. In return for the thimble, Peter gave Wendy an acorn button from his coat. She put it on a chain round her neck. Later on it would be save her life. Peter told Wendy all about how he had run away to live with the fairies in the Kingston garden. Now he lived in Neverland with the lost boys. The lost boys were children who had fallen out of their pranks when their nurses were not looking. Nobody claimed them, so they were sent to Neverland. Wendy asked about the fairies. "Once a baby lamp broke into 1,000 pieces," explained Peter. "Each piece became a fairy. But now children don't believe in fairies so much. Every time a child says, 'I don't believe in fairies,' a fairy somewhere drops down and dead." That reminded Peter of Tinker Bell, who was still shut up in the drawer. She zoomed out in a fuzzy and buzzed round the room. Weirdly, through the thing was lovely, but Tinker Bell hated Wendy and was jealous of her. When Peter gave Wendy a thimble, Tinker Bell gave her hair a splatful tug. So our story ends here. In my next video, I am going to read chapter 2, that is Follow Me. If you liked my today's video, then please like and comment my video. And also subscribe my channel to listen to more such stories and follow all my videos regularly. And don't forget to click on the bell icon. Thank you.